Good morning and welcome to the Lightcast Studios for this live analysis of the JOLTS report, a U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics report that gives us some glimpse into the health of our economy. On this February 1st, 2023, I'm your host, Christopher Laney, and I am joined by two of our labor economists. We have senior labor economist Layla O'Kane and Lightcast chief economist Bloody Teska. Layla, Bloody, welcome to the studio.
Thanks, Chris. Good morning.
Good morning. Welcome. I'm excited to jump into the report with you. And Bloody, I'm going to start with you. This morning, I read in the Wall Street Journal a quote that said, new data indicated the health of the U.S. labor market is deteriorating. So, based on this report, is the U.S. labor market deteriorating?
Well, Chris, JOLT is the gift that keeps on giving and keeps us excited every month. I personally expected not to get a lot of signal. Again, remember, JOLTS comes with a month of lag. So, now we're talking about December data in openings, and not a lot of things happens usually in December, especially when it comes to jobs, hiring, and layoffs. Most people expected a drop, economists, myself included, but surprise, we actually saw an increase of almost more than 500,000 job openings. So, the total economy is actually doing better than it was doing the months before. Now, and remember, there is a lag, so a lot of the interpretation that is out there needs to be kept with a grain of salt. When people are talking about the state of economy, January is an important month that they are keeping in mind, and that's not the signal that we're getting from this report, at least not for January. So there's not much we can say. That one will get the next month. But again, what you see in the news, a lot of layoffs in the tech sector that influence how people perceive the labor market. But based on this report, we're doing pretty good.
Layla, looking at quits and separations, does this report provide any indication that we're experiencing a deterioration in the labor market? And if we're not seeing much movement in the numbers month to month, what does that tell us?
Well, we're not seeing much movement month to month, so glad you asked about that. Yeah, so quits and layoffs did not change very much, and I think that, as Bloody mentioned, there's been a bunch of fears about specific layoffs in sectors, and we have been reading a lot in the media, right, about there being layoffs in tech and across a wide range of big tech companies. And so the big question has been, well, is this spilling over into the rest of the economy? Does this mean that sort of everybody should be concerned about layoffs across all sectors? And that's just not the case in this report. So we're seeing that job openings are up in a lot of the places where layoffs and quits are also up, which kind of indicates that some of this might just be some churn happening, but not necessarily that, a lot of people are losing jobs and unable to find a new position.
Bloody, Layla kind of alluded to some of that industry data. When we're looking at some of this industry data, specifically like retail and accommodations and food services, we're seeing it down, and we saw it up in those areas, and we saw it down in areas like information, where all those tech jobs are. So I have two questions for you. One, this report being delayed in December, or lag in December, do you feel like that retail and the food and accommodations area, is that because of the holidays? One. And then two, are we starting to see that narrative, what's happening in the tech industry, actually play out in the numbers?
I think that a lot of this is sort of by construction. I mean, we can get in the nitty-gritty, but how openings are measured and how layoffs are measured are a little bit different. Like, openings are measured during the last day of the month, and layoffs and hires are measured across the whole month. So essentially, if you have a lot of sort of layoffs happening, you can also have, or people leaving, you can also have openings towards the end. So I do think a lot of this is sort of a bit of a technicality, and we're seeing it mostly in the industries that have a lot of churn and because of the holidays. So I don't interpret this as an indication, essentially, that a lot of the layoffs that we actually are talking about, they are going into other industries as well. I think this is mostly because of September, and is mostly because of this specific industry that we're seeing. I don't expect to see, for example, this in the January numbers. And it's also interesting because information actually had sort of like the lowest layoffs during they dropped during December, and so like a lot of the stocks, nothing like that happened in information.
So this question's for both of you. Layla, I'll start with you. So each month we are trying to predict what's going to happen. Often we are shocked by some of the results. Today, I think a lot of people anticipated the job count to go down, and here we are, it's up again. And so when we start to look at this, this is nothing like traditional cycles we've seen in the past. is this the craziness of the future labor market and just what we're experiencing is going to be normal going forward? And if the labor market's not really affected by other indications of the economy, what does that mean to us?
Yeah, I can start. I mean, I think that we have kind of maintained a pretty high openings rate for the last 2 years. Whether or not we're going to maintain that for 2 more years, I don't know. But I do think that it's worth noting that through what we would think of as the Great Resignation, through the depths of COVID, and recently we've just been seeing really record numbers of openings, and I don't think that that's going to plummet anytime soon. So I do think that we kind of have to admit that employers might be struggling to fill the open roles that they have for a little bit while longer, especially in some of these hotter industries like accommodation and food services and retail.
Similar question, Bloody. What makes this cycle so unique to the labor market? And how do you think this specific report will affect the announcement later today about potential interest rates?
Well, I mean, it's a very tight market and is historically tight, and I do not expect it to although that was originally the fear or the hope. I don't expect it to change too much, even in the near future. And big part of that is because we are missing a lot of people. There are even recent reports and research that we have more than sort of 2 million people are missing from the labor force because they are not working because of COVID or other reasons. And so it will take a lot of time for in a way to sort of replace those people or actually have those people come back. And so I do expect the labor market to be really tight even in the coming months. It is interesting, important, because we had also an important report yesterday, which was the employment cost index, which essentially showed that the wage growth is decelerating, right? And those two together are extremely good news because, again, you need to put those in the same sort of in the same context. Essentially, we have one of the tightest labor markets historically, and the growth in wages is dropping. It can, in a way, get any better than that. I mean, the wage component has been one of the main, the stickiest point, into fighting inflation. And that is showing indication that essentially that is decelerating. So tight labor market with wage growth going down, it's actually pretty good news, especially for team soft landing.
Bloody, I'll stay with you. In this specific report, top takeaways. What do you feel about it?
I mean, for me, the top takeaway is that, again, it's a very tight labor market. We have almost 2 jobs per unemployed people, which historically is one of the highest numbers that we've ever had. And we should keep that in mind, especially when we hear about layoffs here and layoffs there. And I don't think we see any indication that at least the layoffs are in other industries beyond tech.
Layla, same question to you. What are your big takeaways from this specific report?
Yeah, I mean, jumping off Bloody's last point, there are layoffs in tech that we've been seeing in the media, but as he mentioned earlier, information industry layoffs are actually down a little bit, up a little bit in professional and business services. But I think that this tech layoff story is just not infiltrating the whole economy the way that people were worried about. I think we're not showing any indication that we'll have a wage price spiral. We saw that employment cost index went down, and we still have a really high number of openings, and that's really good news overall. I think we are approaching a soft landing that we've been kind of hoping for.
Well, Bloody and Layla, thank you so much for your insights in this conversation and joining us today. You can join us again this Friday as we do another live analysis of the monthly jobs report. For more information about this analysis or any other analysis, visit lightcast.io. From the Lightcast studios, I'm your host, Christopher Laney, and we will see you on Friday.